Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this Pridecast. My name is Sam. I use any pronouns, and I am a lead coordinator for student diversity and belonging at Cal Poly. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about some national priorities for LGBTQ people and their families. And as we move into the new year with a newly elected federal government, we have an opportunity for rebuilding and expanding our nation's commitment towards equality, especially for LGBTQ people. The work ahead of us is plentiful, and much of it will require collaboration and working in coalitions, legislative action, and a recommitment to the values of inclusion, diversity, and non-discrimination at all levels of the government. LGBTQ people, along with so many others, have long been under attack by the federal government, and especially in the recent years. So, as the new administration transitions in, many organizations like the Center for American Progress, the Equality Federation, GLSEN, the Movement Advancement Project, the National Center for Transgender Equality, the National LGBTQ Task Force, and SAGE have all come together and assembled 10 action items to immediately start the work to ensure that LGBTQ people and their families can work hard, care for themselves, be safe in the communities in which they live, and be protected from discrimination. So, number one, we need to create a federal plan to address the rampant and increasing violence against transgender people, and especially against Black transgender women. We may need to establish a cross-agency task force to address the killings and violence and investigate violence and law enforcement's response to it. We need to work towards violence prevention through addressing improved data collection and hate crimes reporting, discrimination, economic security, safe housing, trauma-informed care, the criminalization of transgender people, and other safety concerns. We also need to act quickly to protect LGBTQ people from discrimination by directing all federal agencies to update their regulations, guidance, and policy to reflect the most recent June 2020 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity are illegal forms of sex discrimination. And we need to enforce robust protections by all federal agencies in these areas. We need to reinstate questions about sexual orientation and gender identity that were previously removed from surveys and work to enhance that these questions are included on all federal surveys, including those used to enforce civil rights. We also need to review and restore non-discrimination protections for individuals who are accessing government programs and benefits across all these federal agencies, including the Department of Health and Human Services, and that we assess civil rights enforcement to ensure that there is equitable access for people of all protected classes. Number three, we need to reverse the ban on military service by transgender people and require that the Department of Defense return to inclusive policies to ensure non-discrimination and reverse all policies that perpetuate stigmatization of and discrimination against people living with HIV. Number four, we need to immediately release those that are held by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, including transgender asylum seekers and people living with HIV. We know that asylum seekers are currently experiencing a high risk from COVID, violence, mistreatment, and a lack of medical care. And we must rescind the migrant protection protocols and orders that are blocking entrance to the United States and restore humanitarian protections while ensuring that LGBTQ people can access them. Number five, we need to set public health goals to achieve the end of the U.S. HIV epidemic and eliminate HIV-related health disparities by 2025. This includes ensuring that there is a broad and equitable access to effective HIV care and treatment, reducing the number of new HIV cases through evidence-based HIV prevention strategies, and addressing the social and structural barriers of HIV-related health care. We also need to reestablish the Office of National AIDS Policy, led by key experts. Number 6, we need to require that the Federal Bureau of the Corrections return to the previous version of the Transgender Offender Manual and implements policies in compliance with the Federal Prison Rape Elimination Act regarding the placement of transgender and intersex people who are incarcerated. We also need to immediately end the use of solitary confinement in federal prisons and all immigration detention. Number 7, we need to restore the United States' leadership on LGBTQ human rights and safety internationally. And we need to direct all federal agencies involved in foreign affairs and assistance to address the human rights and developmental needs of LGBTQ people globally. Number 8, we need to direct the Department of Justice to review and update agency positions on ongoing litigation. This includes all filings in lower court challenges of the Affordable Care Act, Title IX litigation for transgender students, and others to reflect the most recent Supreme Court decision and the importance of non-discrimination protections. Number 9, we need to create an LGBTQ Equity Advisory Council. This may include community members, members of Domestic Policy Council, senior level staff at the Department of Health and Human Services, and other key partners to identify key action steps that we can take and engage our advocates. Number 10, we must direct all federal agencies to protect LGBTQ youth and elders and all those who are accessing our programs, especially the Departments of Education, Health and Human Services, and Housing and Urban Development. We need to issue clear policies of non-discrimination for all federal programs. We also need to reinstate the 2016 guidance on transgender students' rights, pending a revision to the recent Supreme Court decision and other legal developments. We need to issue new comprehensive guidance on non-discrimination and privacy rights for LGBTQ students under Title IX, FERPA, the Equal Access Program, or Act, and other relevant laws. We need to issue new regulations regarding sexual assault and harassment and update policies to protect LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness and who may be in the child welfare system. We can work to ban the use of youth conversion therapy and expand efforts to protect and promote mental health, including anti-bullying policies and suicide prevention. We also need the administration of community living to strongly and swiftly implement the language found in the 2020 reauthorization of the Older Americans Act, which requires the state units on aging and area agencies on aging to be held accountable for collecting data on the needs of LGBTQ older people and whether they are meeting those needs, engaging in outreach, and reporting back to the agencies they are responsible to do so. Longer term, there are several things that we could be doing. We can improve access to accurate identity documents for transgender and non-binary people, meaning that we can work across federal agencies to streamline the process for obtaining an updated Social Security and passport identification documents, including those with a third gender marker for non-binary people. We need to ensure robust enforcement of federal civil rights protections, including increasing federal enforcement of civil rights protections and expand investigations into anti-LGBTQ discrimination complaints. We could request additional civil rights enforcement funding from Congress for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice, and individual agency civil rights departments to speed the process and improve enforcement. We can include LGBTQ people in affirmative civil rights testing for discrimination. For example, we could proactively call public services, contracted businesses, shelters, and etc. to test for discriminatory policies. And one of the most important things I think that we will be heading into in the next couple of years is working with Congress to advance legislative priorities. And I have them listed out here. We need to work to pass the Equality Act, which would update all of our nation's civil rights laws to prohibit discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity in all key areas of life. We could pass the Do No Harm Act, which would clarify when the Religious Freedom Restoration Act can be used and when discrimination should not be permitted. We could pass the Every Child Deserves a Family Act to promote LGBTQ youth and families from discrimination in the child welfare system. We could pass the GLOBE Act to build a U.S. diplomatic framework to protect LGBTQ people abroad. We could pass the Ruthie and Connie LGBTQ Elder Americans Act, which would establish LGBTQ older people as a class of greatest social need under the Older Americans Act. We could pass the Safe Schools Improvement Act, which would require every school district to develop policies related to bullying and harassment based on a student's actual or perceived race, color, national origin, sex, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religion. And lastly, we need to ensure that COVID-19 relief legislation includes non-discrimination policies. So there you have it. Immediate national priorities for LGBTQ people and their families. You can read the entire report below. But we also invite you to check out all the amazing things happening in LGBTQ campus life this month and to visit our website at pride.calpoly.edu for more education and resources. Thank you.